I will be resigning as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Scheer shock. Andrew Scheer resigns as leader of the Conservative Party. As you saw there, Scheer rose in the House of Commons this morning and said it was time to put his family first, but there has been a push within the party for change since the Conservatives lost the election in October. And today, a new twist. Anna Thibodeau has more now from Ottawa.
Leader of the opposition wants to rise on a point of personal privilege.
The timing came as a shock.
I will be resigning as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Andrew Scheer says the job was taking a toll on him and his family.
Our party needs someone who can give everything they've got. And I've always been honest with my colleagues. I've always been honest with everybody. I know that the road ahead, the stress that would put on my family, I can't give them that 100% assurance.
In recent weeks, there's been a growing push by powerful Conservatives to oust Scheer. They felt he was in large part to blame for losing the election, for not making gains in Quebec and Ontario, and because of his positions on issues like abortion and same-sex marriage. And today, word that someone was preparing to leak news the party paid for his children's private school tuition in a move to turn party members against him. After many long, hard conversations with his family and friends, Scheer made up his mind, and he began to inform his staff earlier this week.
Serving as leader of the party that I love so much has been the opportunity and challenge of a lifetime. And this was not a decision I came to lightly.
Many in Scheer's caucus believed it was the right decision.
When you make the accumulation of bad decisions, at the end of the day, we lost confidence in Andrew Scheer, and the movement's growing, and I think he realized that he cannot resist for the confidence vote in April.
Scheer says he'll stay on as leader until his replacement is chosen and plans to remain as an MP. But he's asked the party to immediately begin preparing for a leadership race. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Hannah mentioned the possible leak of news that the Conservative Party paid for Scheer's children's private school tuition. Scheer's office confirmed that the party was paying the difference between the cost of tuition in Saskatchewan and Ottawa, but described it as minimal in the thousands of dollars. They insisted the tuition matter was not the reason for the resignation, and the party called it a standard offer. Meanwhile, other party leaders in the House offered their best wishes to Scheer following today's announcement.
For all the challenges, it is an extraordinary privilege that is enriching and wonderful, and I know that the member opposite has shown tremendous strength and compassion.
It's a very difficult decision to take, and I want to acknowledge the hard work that you put in all your roles and the years of service that you've provided, and I think we speak as a united voice in acknowledging that and thanking you for your service.
During the election, Scheer, of course, campaigned here in Ontario, but never did with the Conservative Premier of this province. Today, this is what Doug Ford had to say about Scheer's resignation. Ford wrote, "I wish Andrew Scheer all the best as he undertakes this new chapter in his life and thank him for his service as the head of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition and leader of the Conservative Party. I also want to take this opportunity to give my best wishes to Mr. Scheer's wife, Jill, and their 5 children."
This is the second important election that I voted in. I voted in 1945, and I'm pleased I was able to vote today.
I voted Remain in the referendum, so yeah, I would be a Remain. So that's where I'm torn.
A historic choice in a deeply divided Britain. Polls are now closed. We'll take you live to London as the results roll in. That's coming up in just a few minutes. Some breaking news now when it comes to how cannabis is sold here in Ontario. CBC Toronto has learned the province is opening up the market to allow more retail stores with some major changes. There will be no more temporary cap on the number of private cannabis stores in Ontario, and pre-qualification requirements for those who want to open retail shops are being eliminated. Now, in the past, that had included things like having a location and financing lined up before applying. Anyone with certain cannabis-related offenses or those who have ties to organized crime will still be barred from getting a license. One smaller change, stores will now be allowed to sell items like cannabis magazines and cookbooks. The province will begin accepting license applications on January 6th. A Toronto woman has been taking up a complex care bed in Etobicoke for years because she can't get a surgery that would put her on the road to recovery. Now, the woman's daughter says the wait is not just emotionally taxing, it is also locking up a hospital bed someone else might need. Lisa Shing has more now in this exclusive story.
For 2 years now, Ula Jabber has only been able to see her 10-month-old granddaughter at her complex care room at Trillium Health Centre in Etobicoke. Jabber can't speak because she's been connected to a breathing tube ever since she suffered complications from pneumonia 4 years ago.
There's no worse feeling than seeing a loved one suffer, and I think that is the hardest thing that I had to go through because I'm her only child.
For the last 2 years, she has been waiting for a procedure that could potentially allow her to live without the tube and return home.
Are you okay, Mama?
A Toronto specialist has agreed to perform the surgery, but Jabber's daughter, Fatima Salim, says her mother is still waiting for the doctor to set a date.
What is it like being able to only see your mom here in complex care?
As each year passes, I just think to myself, like, had it been done already, she would have been home right now.
Salim says her mother has missed major milestones, her wedding and the birth of her daughter.
I mean, there are days where I'd go home and just cry myself to sleep because I couldn't do anything about it, really. We have never been updated about where on the list she is. Has she even moved up? There's no transparency whatsoever.
The room Jabber is in is also subsidized by taxpayers. Salim says someone else who may need it more could be in there if her mother's procedure had already been done.
She's on a waiting list, and it's not fair that it's in turn affecting other people.
Lisa joins us now with more on this. They've been waiting for 2 years for something that could get mom home. But this is an example of a larger issue here.
It is, Dwight, and I spoke with a patient advocacy group here in Ontario that says really what happens is ORs are underfunded.
So
when the government has put in the resources to reduce the wait times, they have been reduced. It's really not rocket science.
Now, I also spoke with Trillium Health, where the mom is staying, and they tell me as of Tuesday this week, there were 14 people on the wait list, Dwight.
And since the government oversees fundings to hospitals, obviously, what are they saying?
Well, interesting enough, after this story went up this morning online, the NDP, the opposition leader, brought it up in question period. So here's a bit of the exchange between her and Health Minister Christine Elliott.
Can the Premier explain to Ms. Jabber's family and to all Ontarians why anyone should have to live in a hospital bed year after year waiting for procedures that should be available but simply never arrive?
This was a very rare and unusual procedure. There are very, very few surgeons who are able to perform this procedure. So this was not anything to do with hallway healthcare. This had to do with the particular circumstances for this woman.
And interestingly enough, after we started calling around on this story, the hospital actually ended up telling the family that they would try to squeeze Jabber in sometime in the new year, so we'll be following up on that.
Shouldn't take us doing this story for them to have some movement on this, but we will follow up. Thank you, Lisa.
Absolutely.
We should have a right to free collective bargaining, and this bill abrogates that right.
Still ahead, the 4 biggest teachers' unions in this province are taking the Ford government to court. They are challenging a law capping public sector wage increases, claiming it violates the Charter of Rights. We'll have that story for you coming up. A Toronto couple says their Lexus SUV has been stolen twice since May, and both times the thieves were able to take it without having the keys. They say the vehicle's computer system is being hacked, and they also say they have security footage to prove it. Greg Ross explains.
It didn't take long for Danny Goulas to realize yesterday was going to be a bad day.
I had my coffee. I was going upstairs to get ready for work. I look out the window and there's no car, and I just thought, no, not again.
Oh, yes, again. For the second time in 7 months, Goulas' 2017 Lexus LX 570 had been stolen. Only this time, he captured the thief on his security cameras.
The car's parked here. He shows up, and 9 minutes later, he's driving away with your car.
Yep. It was that easy.
It happened just after 3 o'clock Wednesday morning. First, the thief can be seen walking up and down the street in front of Goulas' house, and within seconds, he's at the driver's side door.
Looking at his backpack, there was something flashing. So they're so organized. Obviously, they have a way of getting into the car.
It took about 6 minutes for the thief to open the door. About 3 minutes later, the lights come on and the car drives away.
I'd say the car is parked about 20 feet from here, and the box where I keep the keys is a good 40 feet from where we are.
The first time Goulas had his car stolen, he was told the thieves likely hacked his key fob. But this time, he had it tucked away in a tin box at the back of his house.
I thought this time it was foolproof.
It took close to 4 months for Goulas to get his car back on the road the last time. It was found in a shipping container in Montreal. They believe it was on its way to be sold in another country.
If it's in a container, it's going somewhere abroad, and there's a market for it.
According to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, Lexus SUVs were the 7th most stolen vehicles last year. In a statement from Lexus Canada, a representative told us, our industry has been working closely with the Canadian insurance industry and police authorities across Canada to assist with investigations related to vehicle theft. Goulas thinks they need to do more.
I hope that Lexus fixes this and Toyota. I think it's a Lexus-Toyota problem, but I'm not an expert.
Goulas says the next time he buys a car, it won't be a Lexus. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Call it, isn't me, or should we be talking about wind chill? Because the temperatures don't look that high, but keep factoring in that wind chill.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And the winds are playing such a part in what's going on for us, Dwight. So yeah, this morning we were at -9. Factor in the winds, it felt like -16 to -17. What's really important, though, is the direction, and it's changing. It changed today. We're into more of a southerly flow, south to southeast, and that helps with those temperatures. So the winds aren't terribly strong, so the wind chill not as significant as we go into Friday. But we're also looking at our readings -1, so we've actually been coming up as we go into the later evening hours. We didn't hit our high there in the afternoon. It's continuing to come up, and we won't see much of a change through the overnight in terms of it falling off on us. Now, we do have a bit of cloud cover certainly in place into the overnight hours, becoming more partly cloudy, so we start off little bit of sun. They're still looking at snow to the north of us up into cottage country, actually a little bit beyond that in some cases into northern Ontario. But the clouds will be increasing through the day tomorrow afternoon and evening. That's ahead of the next system that's going to be coming in here and having a real impact on our weekend. I'm going to go into more detail on that coming up, but I do want to just give you a little clue. Saturday night into Sunday, we may see, Friday night into Saturday, a bit of mixed precipitation first before this changes into periods of rain that we'll be looking at through the day on Saturday. But -1 overnight tonight, 5 degrees for tomorrow afternoon. That will feel much better, Dwight.
Woohoo! Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
You are looking at a live shot of London. Polls are now closed and votes are being counted in what is a high-stakes election in Britain. And exit polls suggest the UK Conservatives are poised to win a majority government. Brexit, of course, has been front and center in today's vote. This after months of political deadlock to pass a deal. Renee Filipponi joins us from a counting station in London. And Renee, the polls have closed. What do we know at this point?
Well, if the exit polls are correct, this is going to be a historic election on a number of fronts. As you mentioned, Boris Johnson's Conservatives look as though if these exit polls are correct, they could win a majority, and a bigger majority than any of the polls had predicted throughout the election. 368 seats. That's an 86-seat majority, up 50 seats, and that's the best performance the party has had since 1987 and when Margaret Thatcher was around. Now, this is a devastating loss potentially for the Labour Party, who could be down 71 seats, and for them, this would be the worst performance since 19 35. Now, keep in mind the counting is still going on. We don't have any official results from any ridings yet. That's because all of these paper ballots need to be counted by hand, and this takes hours. We are in Hammersmith here where they expect results sometime in the early morning, and we're not really going to get a sense of those official results probably till sometime around noon Friday once all the ridings have been tallied. But people are already sort of talking about this, contemplating what this means, because no one was expecting a win of this size if these exit polls are correct for Boris Johnson.
You say people are already talking. What kind of reaction are you hearing then, Renee?
Well, the Conservative members are trying to play it down and, say these are early days yet, but they're really saying, specifically we heard from the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, she's saying, this is because we had some great candidates, and the message of get Brexit done, which is what Boris Johnson kept pushing throughout the campaign, really resonated with people, and that is going to be their first priority. MPs get back into the House Tuesday, they're going to get legislation passed, and they promise to be out of the EU by the end of January, which is the deadline. There is a lot of talk right now from Labour members, Labour MPs, Labour people within the party about what happened, what went wrong. We've heard from John McDonnell, who is a high-ranking MP, an ally of Jeremy Corbyn. He's saying the big problem here is that this election became too much about Brexit, and that none of the other issues, the healthcare service, the end of austerity, were really able to get through. But people are already calling and saying this is Corbyn's problem. He wasn't likable. He pushed the party too far left. And people are being asked about the future of his leadership. No one's really talking about that yet, but are saying, this is a conversation that will be had in the days to come.
Renee Filipponi joining us live from across the pond in London tonight. Thank you, Renee. A Guelph man facing 2 terrorism-related charges has been denied bail. He appeared in a Brampton courtroom today. The RCMP charged 22-year-old Ikar Mao for leaving Canada to participate in a terrorist group. Now, earlier this year, Mao and his wife were detained in Turkey. According to Turkish records viewed by CBC News, it was feared they were attempting to join ISIS. The couple denies the claims. An investigation began upon their return to Canada in October. The RCMP wouldn't comment on whether Mao's wife is under investigation because of a publication ban. Mao is expected back in court December 23rd. Still ahead, a woman is dead after a fire in Etobicoke, and police believe it was arson.
I was shouting, there's a woman inside, please get the woman out. There's a woman inside, please get, because I saw a car. If a car is there, she's inside. It's a terrible thing.
What we know about the woman who lived there and the odd circumstances of the person who police have under arrest. Now, that's coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
4 separate teachers' unions are taking the government to court. They are launching a charter challenge on a bill limiting wage increases. All this as unions and the province are struggling to agree on a contract. Lorenda Redekop has the latest from Queen's Park.
We should have a right to free collective bargaining. And this bill abrogates that right.
4 unions heading to court, launching 4 separate yet similar charter challenges over Bill 124. It caps all public sector wage increases at 1% per year.
This is not about money. It's about the right to negotiate without government interference.
The bill became law last month, officially called the Protecting a Sustainable Public Sector for Future Generations Act.
Instead, it is an insulting attempt by the Ford government to undermine public sector workers and sow division among Ontarians.
The government says it's needed to limit spending. Today, the minister repeated his message.
Bill 124 is fair, reasonable, and time limited. I think it's fair, it's reasonable, it's time limited, fair, reasonable, and time limited manner.
He also said this.
I wouldn't have proposed it if I didn't think it was defendable in the courts.
A similar bill under the previous Liberal government also headed to court and lost. Bill 115 took away the right to strike and froze wages. The interim Liberal leader says he expects this bill to lose as well. Bill 115 cost the government at least $100 million. The elementary school teachers union still hasn't agreed to compensation in that case. The unions say even though they're launching another court challenge, it doesn't mean they can't bargain for their new contracts.
We're not simply, as the minister has referred to 300 times, focusing on or bargaining only for compensation. There are a number of other key items that we are bargaining.
But the rift between unions and the government is clear.
The heads of the unions want to make sure they line the pockets of the unions. They don't worry about the teachers. They don't worry about the parents. Our government worries about the teachers.
Contract talks are scheduled for next week with both the elementary and high school teachers unions. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Today was the last day that Queen's Park is scheduled to sit in 2019. The legislature now adjourns for a 2-month break. Let's go to our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley. And Mike, what happens with teacher contract talks when the legislature is not in session?
Well, actually, nothing really changes. Queen's Park doesn't have to be sitting for those teacher negotiations to continue. In fact, just because the politicians are not here in the legislature doesn't actually mean they're on holidays. MPPs go and work in their constituencies. Cabinet meetings happen every week or two, and the job of a cabinet minister never really stops. It's also important to remember that if any of the teachers' unions launch a full-blown strike, the government has the power to call MPPs back here in case they want to have an emergency sitting to try to push through back-to-work legislation.
What do you expect the government and the opposition parties then to be focused on over the next couple of months?
Well, Dwight, certainly for the government, getting contract deals with the teachers' unions is going to be a big focus, but also preparing the budget. The work on the budget has already begun, and that budget has to be tabled by the end of March. You'll certainly recall all that negative fallout from the Ford government's first budget, so it's going to be very important for them to get this next one right. As for the opposition, well, the polls are suggesting that the New Democrats are really no more popular than the Liberal Party, and the Liberals don't even have a leader. So I asked NDP leader Andrea Horwath, what is she going to do differently to try to boost her party's fortunes?
We're going to continue to fight for the people of this province. We're going to continue to put forward great ideas that will make life better instead of worse. And we're going to continue to have our team connect with Ontarians and show folks that it doesn't have to be this way.
And so finally, for the Ontario Liberals, their focus is that party leadership race. The next big event for that comes in early February when party members pick who's going to be the delegates to the leadership convention, and that convention itself happens in early March. Dwight?
Thank you, Mike.
Walking by this building in Leslieville, it looks like a bunch of businesses, but some residents tell us they've been living here for decades. I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, now some of those residents say they've been faced with eviction notices after fighting to have residential tenancy instead of a commercial one.
Police are investigating a fatal fire in Etobicoke. Firefighters arrived to find the two-story home fully engulfed in flames last night. A man has been charged with arson, but police may lay more charges. Linda Ward has the details.
Firefighters say they arrived around 9:30 last night to see heavy smoke and flames coming from this townhome here on Stallion Place. The damage so extensive you can see right through this home. A fire so hot it even melted firefighters' helmets and suits. One was even taken to hospital with minor injuries. And the man who lives in this home here next door rushed out to see his neighbor's home up in flames.
About 9:15. So I was in the living room and I started smelling smoke. So I started looking around to see what is going on. I saw smoke up, but I saw fire on the ground. And that was when I ran back to call 911. So I was shouting, there's a woman inside, please get the woman out. There's a woman inside, please get, because I saw a car. If a car is there, she's inside. It's a terrible thing.
When they got inside, they found one person dead. Later, a 24-year-old man walked himself into hospital and was arrested.
The initial charges that will be laid at this point in time is arson. That's going to depend on how the investigation unfolds, but we do consider the death to be suspicious. We do consider the fire to be suspicious.
Neighbors reacted in shock today. They described the homeowner as a quiet woman who's lived in this home for many years and worked as a nurse. They say she had an adult son.
Because we've lived together for more than 10 years, and being a single parent she was, hardworking like any Canadian, doing multiple jobs to survive. I was sad, and I couldn't even sleep throughout. I couldn't sleep. It's heartbroken.
Police have not yet confirmed any relationship between the suspect and the victim, but they do say it's possible these charges could be upgraded. The homicide unit and the Office of the Fire Marshal are investigating. Linda Ward, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police have identified 22-year-old Jeremy Vincent Urbina as the victim of last night's shooting in North York. It happened just before 8:30 in the Leslie Street and Finch area. When police arrived, they say they found Urbina dead. Two suspects were seen running away. Police say their faces were concealed and both suspects were wearing dark clothing. Investigators are asking anyone with information to come forward. A group of tenants in Leslieville claim they are being forced out of their homes. The building they live in is industrial, but the residents say they've been renting there for years. At the center of their fight with the landlord is a rent increase. Talia Ritchie has more.
From the outside, 276 Carlaw appears to be mostly businesses. But there are residents who have called these trendy lofts home for decades.
The landlord proposed a 55% rent increase to me, and other people were also getting pressure to move out or pay exorbitant rent increases.
The tenants have been signing commercial leases. The building is zoned as industrial, so it's not covered by residential rent controls. Residents say they only got eviction notices after winning a fight to be recognized as residential tenants at the Landlord and Tenant Board.
It's obvious that this is a retaliatory eviction because we dare to defy the landlord's wishes.
In a statement to CBC News, the lawyer representing the landlord says a landlord is permitted to terminate a residential tenancy in order to convert the unit to a commercial use, adding the landlord never agreed to permit residential tenancies. But this listing from 2010 describes a loft as open concept living, and tenants say others who live there aren't being evicted.
We're clearly being targeted for standing up for our rights.
The City of Toronto said the landlord hasn't applied for residential permits and that it will be conducting an inspection and taking action. The tenants have a hearing at the Landlord and Tenant Board to fight their eviction in January. Currently, their eviction notice states that they have to be out of their units by the end of February. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
An apparent act of racism is under scrutiny at Transport Canada. This one involving an email sent by an employee about travelers wearing turbans. It was shared in a department that manages Canada's no-fly list. As Ashley Burke reports, one former worker says she tried to blow the whistle, but claims it was covered up for a decade.
It's depressing, and in the end, I couldn't stay.
Normally, sending an offensive email could cost you your job. But this former Transport Canada worker says it was receiving one and complaining that sank her career.
Your life is made a living hell in that context. You will be labeled as the difficult one. You will be labeled as the loudmouth. And eventually they'll make it so toxic for you that you have to leave.
This is the email sent in 2008. Renee Suterick says Superintendent Mark Haynes sent it to her and other colleagues, including managers. It read, they should play this non-stop at all airports, and included this spoof of a Frank Sinatra song that she calls racist.
Strangers on my flight
Turbans they're packing, wondering if they might plan a hijacking.
Absolutely disgusted. The fact that he thinks it should be played in all airports is pretty indicative of his state of mind and the hate he harbors in his heart.
Their department makes sure airlines comply with Canada's no-fly list. For years, Suderich said she raised concerns to senior management, but claims no action was taken. Her lawyer says that signals a larger cultural problem.
To think that it was circulated amongst personnel at Transport Canada who are charged with some parts of Canadian security and border control, it's a real issue, and it would raise flags for anybody coming in who was a member of a minority or visible minority community.
A briefing note obtained by CBC News reveals Transport Canada didn't investigate until Amnesty International complained the email compromised the integrity of the no-fly list.
I think a 10-year delay is absolutely unacceptable.
Transport Canada won't release the findings of the investigation, citing privacy. In a statement, it said workers who received the email do not have influence over the no-fly list, adding discriminatory behaviors are not tolerated.
The worker accused of sending the email declined a repeated request for an interview, but did confirm that he wasn't disciplined in any way. Haynes is still working for the federal government. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
New Zealand is sending in a military team to recover the bodies of people killed in Monday's deadly volcano eruption.
Our first priority will be to get those 6 people off, and we will have very limited opportunity to look about for the 2 others that we suspect are out there somewhere.
The military team will move quickly because the volcano is still active. There's a 60% chance of another explosion by the weekend. If the volcano starts venting again, the mission will be aborted. 47 people were on the island when the White Island volcano exploded. Most of those who survived the eruption suffered serious burns. They remain in hospitals across New Zealand and also in Australia. As Vicadopia explains, to survive and heal, they'll need extensive skin grafts, and that will be an international effort.
It was helicopter crews first on the scene that witnessed the human devastation of the volcanic blast.
It blew shirts off and clothing. People were very extensively burned, blisters. We were trying to transport them. The skin was coming off as we were holding people. It was very horrific.
New Zealand health officials say more than 20 people have severe burns, over as much as 90% of their bodies. Australian patients are starting to be transferred back home as New Zealand's medical teams are pushed to their limits.
The nature of the burns suffered is complicated by the gases and chemicals in the eruption.
The number of burn patients and the complexity of their care has resulted in an extraordinary request.
An additional 1.2 million square centimetres of skin for the ongoing needs of the patients. These supplies are coming from the United States.
That's about 10 times the amount of skin kept at Canada's largest human tissue bank at Toronto's Sunnybrook Hospital. Sections of skin like this, taken from deceased patients, will be used to cover burns only temporarily until unaffected skin can be surgically removed from the patient and grafted on.
So keep him overnight in the merge.
This burn surgeon says it's critical to cover open wounds with donor skin.
Really prevents you from losing fluids, electrolytes, or have risk of infection because the wound is not covered. So this is a tool to help patients to survive, particularly when you're big burn.
Recovery for the victims of the New Zealand volcano will take several months. Harvesting skin, grafting it onto burn wounds, and regrowing skin is an ongoing cycle, which requires painstaking surgery and time. Vicadopia, CBC News, Toronto.
Donald Trump has started a Twitter beef with 16-year-old Greta Thunberg. Yesterday, the climate crusader was named Person of the Year by Time magazine. Now, instead of a congratulatory note, this is what the President of the United States tweeted this morning. So ridiculous, Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill. Minutes later, the savvy teen shot back, updating her Twitter profile to read, I'm a teenager working on her anger management problems, currently chilling and watching a good old-fashioned movie with a friend.
Welcome back, Kawhi Leonard!
We put a ring on it, but he still left. After the break, Kawhi Leonard finally receives his championship bling. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The steady hand in midfield is staying. Toronto FC has re-signed captain Michael Bradley.
Playing here, winning here, it means more. It's pretty simple. When you spill your heart and your soul into something every single day, the emotion of that, that part is so special. And so, you know, for me, my family, you know, what the club, what the city means to us, in the end, it was this was the only place I wanted to be.
Bradley has been with TFC for 6 seasons. Details of the new contract were not immediately clear, but the 32-year-old American could be set to end his career right here in Canada. Bradley led TFC to their only title in 2017 and to the MLS Cup final this season. It was a beautiful homecoming for Kawhi Leonard last night as the champ played his first game in Toronto since leaving the Raptors for the LA Clippers. Before the game, he received some bling for his claw.
Yeah, I was joking with him and just trying to showing him that the ring was nice, like it was shining too bright. And, you know, we started laughing.
Toronto fans gave Leonard a well-deserved standing ovation, thanking him for helping bring a championship to our city. Leonard says being on the court brought back those memories.
Kind of push you back in those spots when you were on the floor, or you know, the locker room talk going into the game and after the game, watching those highlights. And you know, it was a special season for us, for me, for the whole city and country. And you know, I'm glad we were able to win. It was a blessing.
After the ceremony, it was all business as the main reason. Hi, Colette.
Hi.
Colette was at the game last night, and Colette knows that, yes, we lost that game, Colette, but it's all right. Ooh. It was a nice homecoming for the Claw, even though we put a ring on it.
Ford man got his ring.
He got his ring. Well deserved, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a little reminiscent to me of when DeMar DeRozan came back after his first game back when he was with San Antonio, and just how much everybody just wanted to thank them. And They just put their head down and don't let us love you.
Yes,
we
okay.
want to love you. Yeah, it was a nice event. All right, and not the outcome of the game, of course. Let's take a look at what's going on in terms of what's happening with our headlines. Temperatures turning around as the winds have turned around. That's helping push the temps up. So mild considering and comparing. Increase in clouds, though, as we go, especially into tomorrow afternoon, we'll be seeing that. And it does look like we're going to see some rain and maybe at times some mixed precipitation. We're going to take a closer look at the system coming in for the weekend. These are the current temperatures. So have you noticed something? It's actually milder now than it was this afternoon. It was -3 the heart of the afternoon, and now we're up to -1. And that temperature will be, it might even come up a little further and then just drop back to -1. So nearly steady through the overnight. Yes, there is a wind chill, feels like -6, but not nearly as significant. It was about 10 degrees cooler than that, the wind chill, in terms of how it felt this morning. So still looking at some of these snowfalls up to the north of us. We're just into some of the cloud cover here. We'll see partly cloudy skies, though, as we get into the overnight. I really want to turn your attention to some of the moisture that's way down in the southeastern U.S. It's going to pull more in from the Gulf, in fact. And as this system starts to move up the eastern seaboard, we're going to shift our focus from here over to here as that comes up. In fact, some of the energy is going to come together, but what happens is Friday night, so this is 1 a.m., Friday night into Saturday morning, it looks like through the overnight, we could even, by the way, get a little bit of mixed precipitation by Saturday morning, then turning over to some rain up into cottage country, a mix, and maybe some wet flurries to wet snow passing through there. It's going to move pretty quickly, so we'll see periods of some heavier rain. Now, if it tracks a little further east, and at one time today, the models kind of wanted to push that track further east, we'll see less, which would be great, right? It's the first part of our weekend. For now, though, it does look like we'll have some periods of rain and then some flurries or a bit of a mix on the backside of that, but know that Sunday it's also going to become quite breezy. But at least we've got a couple of mild days ahead of us. Not bad overnight either, with our low just being around -1. There's where we're headed for the temperature for the high tomorrow afternoon. 5 degrees. It's going to be a nice day on Friday, even if there is a little bit of extra cloud cover to contend with. And then Saturday, the temperature is still mild, but it's going to start to feel cooler. Cool rain, 4 degrees. Sunday, breezy and 1. And Sunday night into Monday, temperatures will start to fall off again. So we do see things cooling down. And Dwight, I'll just mention there's a chance Monday night into Tuesday of seeing another significant storm, but it's still kind of far out to get too worried about that one.
It's a good thing all the other stuff has melted away. We've made room for it if it comes. Thank you, Paulette.
Yes, we have. You're welcome.
Before the Ontario legislature wrapped up today, the province passed a historic private members bill. They created the province's first poet laureate position in memory of Gord Downie.
My advance apologies to the real poets in the gallery today, but it is my humble opinion and supposition that it's difficult for a member of the official opposition to convince the government to consent to a bill they themselves didn't craft and present. But today, in a display of democratic leadership, let's show the gallery some true nonpartisan fellowship. Together, be we, be bourgeois or proletariat, for Gord Downie, let's create a poet laureate.
Mr. Hatfield, that was pretty good. He introduced the bill 2 years ago, shortly after Gord Downie died. The successful candidate will be in charge of promoting the arts and literacy in Ontario and acting as an ambassador for poetry and literature. Canada and many major cities, including Toronto, also have poet laureates.
We work pretty long hours, and it's really nice to kind of in the middle of the day just take a little bit of a break.
Sleep is by the brain, for the brain, and for the body.
Imagine not only being allowed to nap at work, but being encouraged to take a snooze. The benefits of catching Z's coming up after the break. A midday nap might feel indulgent, but it can do wonders for the body and mind, and it turns out for productivity too. More and more businesses and universities are investing in sleep spaces, but as Cass Rusi explains, too much of a good thing can come at a cost.
Slippers are the first sign. Let's go in and see. That we're about to enter a cozy space. You've replicated a cave.
In a sense, yes.
The floors and walls are lined with soft felt that help dampen the noise. Resting areas provide comfort and relaxation.
I think everyone should try this.
This art installation at the University of Toronto is all about the nap. Once frowned upon, napping is not only encouraged here, but celebrated.
We thought, what better place to stage an experiment in slowing down during the day than in a school of architecture.
Summer is the curator of the exhibition, which is here until the spring.
Our students have become more stressed out and have had increasing levels of anxiety in recent years because of our kind of plugged-in life.
We work pretty long hours, and it's really nice to kind of in the middle of the day just take a little bit of a break.
In a sleep-deprived world, catching a few Z's does have its benefits. Research shows it can do everything from boosting your immune system to improving alertness. The latest study involving Swiss adults aged 35 to 75 also found that a daytime nap taken once or twice a week could lower the risk of heart attacks or strokes.
Sleep is by the brain, for the brain, and for the body.
In a 24-hour work cycle where employees are often expected to work long hours, many companies have created nap-friendly spaces.
Companies would realize that an attentive, alert worker is going to do a better job.
This is our premium bed.
Mezabine Rahman used to work in a job that came with long hours. She and her colleagues were often exhausted.
And I would be like, oh my God, I wish there was something where I could go and sleep even for 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
So she created a nap studio in Toronto where $10 gets you 40 winks.
Right now, it's all the white-collar employees. They're the one who needs the nap in between because they're probably working on computers or like doing paperwork. So their eyes, they need to rest.
Researchers are still divided over how long a nap should last. A new study released today warned that people napping for more than 90 minutes were 25% more likely to have a stroke. Experts say if you need to doze during the day, keep it short. Not more than 20 minutes. Cass Rusi, CBC News, Toronto.
It certainly is mysterious to us. Presumably they have some work to do. Maybe they're finishing the theater.
After the break, we go back to 1987 and explain how a theater turf war jeopardized the opening of the Pantasias. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
You'd never believe in your wildest dreams that this theater could possibly open tonight.
December 12th, 1987 was supposed to be the opening of the newly renovated Pantages Theater near Yonge and Dundas. There were just a few problems, though. Workers were still laying bricks, plastering walls, and plugging in lights just hours before 800 invited guests were set to arrive for a screening of the film Wall Street. The root cause was an ongoing war between Cineplex Odeon, which owned the Pantages, and rival Famous Players, which owned the Imperial 6. The two competing chains shared the building. Famous Players said there was no firewall separating the two, so the Ontario Fire Marshal inspected and said the show wouldn't go on.
Firewall, this building is not safe tonight. Is that right?
These are matters beyond our control. We're having them cleaned up over the next few hours so we can open tomorrow night at 6 o'clock.
And open they did. Although it isn't theater, a beloved holiday production is opening tonight in Toronto. Dancers will grace the stage in the National Ballet of Canada's The Nutcracker. And before their debut, the company got a special surprise. A Canadian icon visiting the iconic production. The one and only Celine Dion attended their dress rehearsal. She took time to talk to the company, orchestra, and staff, inspiring everyone. The company says she brought an extra touch of magic to them this holiday season. Forget Celine.
That must have been a thrill.
Our friend Colette will be appearing in the Nutcracker this season as a Cannon doll. Make sure you go. I'm sorry, just kidding. Hopefully we'll take some viz of it and we could play it on the show.
Let me take this moment to apologize if you're going this Sunday
so
for the matinee, because you could have
this Sunday
Kyle
you're doing it.
Lowry, but instead you're going to have me.
I can't wait to see. All right, we got 20 seconds to give them the forecast. Yeah, you can have fun.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. Overnight tonight, mild overnight, -1. And then tomorrow, hey, 5 degrees for our high. We will see increasing cloudiness, however, and then that system coming in on Saturday, bringing some rain for us. But tomorrow is actually going to be quite enjoyable, even though there won't be maybe as much sun as we'd like.
We'll enjoy it. Kyle, Celine, and you? That's kind of cool company.
I'm
Have a
so
good night,
sorry.
everybody.